25,000 subscribers. As you guys are seeing this right now, I have just hit the 25,000 mark. Now, I've always started as a goal, like every other YouTuber out there, is that you start to get your first 100, then your first 1,000, then it's 5,000. After 5,000, I went to 25,000. And we made it. We finally made it. Now, with the content that I tend to cover is very niche or niche-like, and because I don't teach the swing, which everybody wants to know about, it's more about the gear, and that's fine. The whole idea is scores go low, and that's what we want. And thank you, all of you guys that have subscribed and stayed on and have been watching the content. I truly, truly appreciate it. Now, as part of this 25,000, I want to start yet a series. It won't be a very long one. It'll be about 3 or 4 episodes, videos long. And we're talking about putters, okay? We're going to talk about putters. The putter is, obviously it's the one thing we all know that it's scheduled to be used twice in every hole. It is the one club that gets basically very little respect, but it's very cool at the very end on 18 or 19 when you got to drop that 20-footer. All of a sudden, it's the primary weapon. So why is that? Is it because it doesn't hit at 300 yards? But the precision is right there, right? We need to know about the putter. So this is the series. In this series, this is Putter 101. What you need to know about putters. They're very basics. In the second, third, and fourth one, in no particular order, we're going to talk about mallet putters. Then we're going to talk about bladed putters, and then we're going to talk about fitting putters. Okay, and they're all going to glob together, and this will lead into putter reviews. All right, and those will be separate than the series, but they'll be putter reviews, so you guys can watch these series and then understand what I'm talking about when we talk about the reviews. So let's start at the very beginning. So in the beginning, there was wood, right? There was wood. And we have wooden putters. And yes, I am a collector of sorts. And they came with leather grips, wooden shafts, and wooden heads. And they either had animal bone or pieces of metal in order to get to the bottom or get the ball rolling, those gutta percha type balls, right? And that's what these were. Actually, I had this one made on my trip to Scotland. Excellent little putter. It's very, very upright. And it's heavy, and I really like that. And had lofts of around, I'm going to say between 8 and 10 degrees. And that was because the greens weren't nearly as manicured. I mean, there were still goats and wagons and all kinds of stuff running around. So it wasn't until much later that these things really took on a real life on their own. However, there it is. That was in the beginning. I won't say in the industrial age, but what came next was a metal version of basically the same thing. And when you have metal, right, this is a Tad Moore model, a replica model, and you can see it has a very, very long hosel. Again, still the wooden shaft, a different kind of leather that goes through it. And what this was is a much more what they would call a modern design, because you can see how narrow that is in order to get through it. Now, does that mean the greens were that much better? No. But this was just the whole metal club actually got the ball going. It allowed for a little more control, a little easier to reproduce in more of a factory setting, so that each one was more like the next as opposed to individuals in the shaping and stuff like that. And again, the hickory shafts and whatnot. Then came what would be quite possibly one of the most of the era, one of the most popular putters, the 8802s. Obviously, I don't have an 8802. However, as the story goes, the 8802 and its popularity led to the creation of what could be arguably the most popular style of putter that it's ever been made. And it was made by Karsten Solheim. And Karsten Solheim, although this is not a ping putter, he is the author of the Anser model, And the Anser model was made as the answer to the 8802, according to an article I just read. And that started off a litany of copies, or a litany of just different revisions of the same thing to make it better, right? To make it better. So is this all about talking about ping? And no, it's talking about what would be called the bladed putter. So in the first one you saw was kind of mallety, almost like a hybrid on a stick. Then the second one was this very thin blade, and now what we would call the modern blade look. All right, the modern blade. Now, the modern blade is basically a rectangle with a whole bunch of metal cut out of it in order to give you a better resistance to twisting on the heel and on the toe. It also has traditionally has a plumber's neck, and the plumber's neck is a piece of the metal that comes out, it comes over to the side and comes up, and is described as a full shaft offset. Now, Basics 101, we've talked about the fact that it is a blade, and that's the first model, right? And now we are going to talk about the necks, or the offsets. Putters are typically described loft, lie, length, and offsets. And the offsets are described in shaft width. So you're going to have a full shaft offset, a 3/4 shaft offset, half shaft offset, no offset, etc. All right, and that's how they would be described, not a 1/4 inch, a lot offset, or something like that. So it's actually more precise, right? It's a little more precise, and that's what we want. All right, now from that, people are like, well, sometimes they couldn't just wrap their mind around how a bladed works, or their swing paths didn't jive with the way a bladed works. There's a lot of whole reasons why. Hence comes the next piece. And the next piece would be a mallet style. Now this is a smaller one. And the mallet was basically traditionally just this big rounded piece here, and with a aiming area, or the face area, and 90% of them went right into the top, and would have double bend shafts, no bend shafts, single bend shafts, or even plumber's necks, okay, in order to get those offsets that we were just talking about. The idea of this was introducing a new style of balance, which was a face balance. And if you notice, the face is pointing up. That was quite revolutionary, and that was for those ones that were straight back, straight forward. However, that led us into HighMoi type putters. And they started out with, it looked a lot like this, to now they start looking a lot like that. All right, they start looking a lot like these. A lot of metal down there. All right, a lot of carbon, as the case may be. And they're bigger. They're bigger to look at. They have larger sight lines. They have these face balances, and they're just easier to line up, and they're easier to hit for a lot of people. And they became extraordinarily popular, particularly when you were using them as tall putters, when you could really mount them to your chest. Well, now we can't do that anymore. We're arm locking and doing all sorts of other things. And so that takes you into the mallet. So now we have two styles. We have blades, we have mallets. Traditionally, the blade is for a guy with an arcing swing, and the face balance or the mallet is one for a straight back, straight forward. In other series, we will talk about different things for that, okay? This again, 101, very, very basic. Now the next thing, what connects the head to the grip, the shaft, all right? As we showed in the original, in one of the originals, you get the wooden shaft, right? It was heavy by design, I don't think they were very consistent per se. There was ways of testing, but I don't see much going on in the putter. Then you went into the straight steel shaft, right? The straight steel shaft, which was basically you took an iron shaft that was very stiff and you put it in there until somebody designed a steel putter shaft. Now, again, what we're starting to see is exotic shafts. We're starting to see like the Stroke Lab here from Odyssey and Toulon to give it a certain balance. We're starting to see other manufacturers of shafts, or just companies that specifically design these particular putter shafts in order to provide a level of stability. They're very exotic, Do they work? I'd say yes in a lot of cases, but you have to test them on your own. And again, another video for fitting. So you have all these shafts. Now, all of a sudden, the putter went from being this basic thing you just throw in the bag, hopefully I make a few putts, to, oh my God, there's all these choices. And you wouldn't be wrong, right? Finally is now the grip. Again, the grip started off as a leather wrap. It was basically a ribbon about yay wide that you would wrap down there, put pitch on the end and a cap on the other side, and you went and you putted, right? And it was just slightly larger and round, from the mimicking the shaft. That's what it is. Now, what we've had with the advent of injected molded rubber, all of a sudden you could have all these different styles of grips, of which there were. There was what they called the putter grip that had a shoulder on it, which became illegal because your palm would fit right in it. I had a few of those. I'm going to see if I can dig one out. Anyway, the USGA came up and the RNA came up and said, okay, regular grips have to look a certain way, and a putter grip can have a flat, right? Can they have a flat? So if you see this, there's a flat, right? You'll see a flat on these guys. Now, and so now what do we do now? Now we have different styles of how they can sit in your hand. You have a regular putter grip, a pistol grip, and with a flat, kind of a triangular shape, maybe rounded on the bottom center of those things. You know, and what became extraordinarily popular in the day, thanks to Tiger Woods, was that ping blackout grip. And basically it was a very small rubber grip that had little to no texture on it, but it had like this, it wasn't sticky, but it had a grip to it. And that spurred a whole bunch of different textures. Okay, so now we have the rubber. Now introducing a different feel. People didn't like that. Maybe they had an aversion to the rubber in the chemicals in the rubber, whatever. Now Wynn steps up, and they're the authors of synthetic grips, and they come out with a putter grip, and they basically make a putter grip that looks a lot like this one, and basically it's old school. They have an underlisting just like the old school ones used to have, and they would put a synthetic cover over the top of it in order to give you colors, textures, styles, different looks of the way that the putter would look. Very cool. Took off instantly, only to be overcome by, I wouldn't say overcome. Overcome's kind of that's probably not the proper term, but to get in contest with, out comes a group called Superstroke, and they made more of a rounded style, and it look a lot like this. So this is not a Superstroke grip per se, but you notice how it's more rounded here, much bigger. The very big fat grips all of a sudden became popular. And with that, the popular grip, it became this big one with the idea, again, stability. And if you go down through all these improvements, the very last improvements were always to make the putter stable. You had the bigger heads, the wide MOIs, the bigger things like that. The stability shafts, right? These bigger grips for stability. And why is that? Because we don't like waving when we're putting. If you're straight back and straight forward, you can be more consistent. And when you're more consistent, you can actually manage your putting, whether you're consistently pulling or pushing or whatever. At least now you can aim and you can manage your putts and do better, right? And just do better. And so that's Basics 101, right? We take you through the different styles of the heads, different types of the shafts, different types of the offsets, the different types of the grips, all for understanding where we're going to be at. And using this so that we can use the same terminology when we go to the next ones. And we're going to do it. We're going to talk about the specifics in blades, the specifics in mallets, and then the specifics in a lot of fitting, okay? And then we'll start doing some reviews. That should be a lot of fun. And again, guys, 25,000. That is spectacular in my viewpoint. The next one's 50, right? We got to go 50 now. So tell all your friends. Thank you very much again for those that are still subscribing. If you have any questions, put them in the show notes. If you would, follow us. We have a live stream on Mondays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 17:30 for you guys outside the U.S. and that we talk about this very same stuff, and you can ask me these kinds of questions live. And it's a lot of fun. We talk to people out around the world. As always, put the questions in the show notes below, and let's see your scores go low.